integers like this. So we've seen that the input for integers may fail due to incorrect input, and it's just something to expect. And in the future, once we make an input from character input device, and if it fails, we should be able to examine whether it's failed or succeeded and be able to recover from it. For instance, give user the warning that this was incorrect input and go right back to prompt for the original thing. Strings, just like numerical values, come with overloaded operators. So let's convert this to this would be our second version of our demonstration today, and we're proceeding to the third stage here. Right, so just make it the main function again, like this, and again reduce it to this. And so let's go back to strings and say string str equals hello. Okay, and now we can, if we say str equals just type it correctly, equals str plus world, right? So the plus sign is defined for strings. It exists for strings. Of course, this is no longer an arithmetic plus. This actually for strings is an operator, overloaded operator, which implements string concatenation, right? I can even continue this to say space and exclamation point over here, right? So you can just continue concatenation like this. You can use all sorts of mix of things to concatenate. And of course, we'll just make sure that everything looks correctly according to our assumptions. And I'll just display, like, you know, my square brackets str, because this is just a little greeting and a new line over here, and do it like this, right? So if I run it, this is the type of output that I'm getting, and it's totally expected. And so you can see the example of string concatenation right here. Okay, so this is plus, which concatenates strings. If you want to modify a string in place, you can actually shorten this to, let me do a demonstration here. Of course, single line comment helps me to temporarily comment out parts of code. But of course, here it was not necessary to write world and exclamation on as a separate literal strings. I can use a single string like this. Perhaps it's easier to understand what the code is doing, but also you can simplify it to this. This form of concatenation is called compound assignment with something else, and in our case this operator is overloaded in such a way that it does exactly the same as, again, I will write it 2 times, right? So the original form was this, right? And the second form is this. Essentially, when the object is modified in place, right? So we already have hello content inside the string, and if we want to modify it to add something to it, we know there is concatenation. We can do it like this, but at the same time we can do it like this. So it's just a different style, but a lot of professional programmers will attempt to do it like, you know, on the second variation of it. Like I said, this compound assignment means assignment and doing something else, right? So by the way, this would be assignment which would simply change it to say world, right? But if it's a plus, then it takes the original content and adds more to it. This form, of course, does exactly the same. So also, if I build this, of course, the world part will be added twice, right? So when I run it the way it's written right now, the result is printing this because we did our concatenation 2 times, once here and the second time over here. Okay, so by the way, sometimes you can do something twice by mistake, and then you have to find a place where you have this duplicate type of thing. Again, comparing string type to an integer. With an integer, you can do the same thing, right? You can say number plus equals 5, and it will be incremented by 5. Or you can say minus equals 5, and it will be decremented by 5. Okay, so we'll see in other examples of this. A plus plus increments by 1, minus minus subtracts. However, increment plus plus operator does not exist for strings. So strings do not define increment. And if you say something like plus plus str, right, it's going to give me an error that such operator does not exist for strings. However, if I go back to my counter, int count equals 5, right? And if I say increment count, then the result will be that count will be becomes 6, right? Becomes 6. So it's just a short form of saying plus 1. Plus plus is an operation that exists for integral values, and we can use it like that. I'm not going to dwell very long on this because I'm expecting you to read the tutorials and continue with the material in the book, which of course covers it in more detail. Variable names, so things such as str, count, and OK to proceed and other things, of course, refer to, technically, they're called identifiers. Things that we define ourselves are called identifiers. Identifiers are used with functions and with variables. A synonym to them is names, variable names, function names, or identifiers in general, right? So variable names are identifiers, and identifiers obey certain rules. So they can include, of course, letters, but they can also be using digits. For instance, str2 is okay. You can use it as a name. However, if you use digits, the digits cannot be used in front of it, right? So it's okay to start with an alphabetical character, but being followed by digits if you want, but not in front of it. That would be illegal. You can also use underscores that I did over here. Of course, using spaces is not permitted in variable names. So no, you cannot use variable names spaces in variable names. But it's okay to use digits inside of them or at the end, but not in front. Of course, no keywords. Another observation is that using a lowercase or uppercase, by the way, if you highlight an object and press Shift Control U, it will convert it to uppercase in your environment. Control U converts it to lowercase. It's good to know these shortcuts because you constantly want to convert uppercase and lowercase. And this is something like a mixed case, right? And all of these are different variables. So identifiers are case sensitive. So str, str, and str like this are three different variables. However, mixing these types of names or identifiers in the same program with uppercase versus lowercase and something and everything in between is extremely poor style. Don't do that. It's an extremely poor style. So basically, normal case, just use lowercase anytime you program, right? So when it's time to start mixed case or uppercase, I will tell you later on. For now, just use lowercase and it's a normal C, C++ style. Okay, what else? What else I would like to say? I would consider this to be extremely poor style. Do not name your variables single character. It's just single character variables are very evil. It's very difficult to work with them. It's okay to see an example like we tried to use earlier, x equals x plus y. Okay, this is just an example of like, basic syntax of the language. But when doing something real, never use single character names. Poor style, very difficult to understand, very difficult to follow, very hard to maintain, and easy to make all sorts of mistakes. So just this str is, 1,000 times better than using a single character names. A lot of companies have programming handbooks for their new employees, and I can assure you in any official handbook, there most likely will be a paragraph somewhere where it says we do not allow single character variable names in our code. So just be aware of it.